All right, can you guys see me? Is that working well? As you're coming in, make sure you hit the share button. Tonight's conversation is going to be absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. Tonight we are talking about preserving Black joy. This is a part of our Black talk series. We've got some amazing conversations scheduled over the next few weeks, and we're so excited about the impact that this is going to have on you all, on your families, on your loved ones. So make sure as you're coming in to hit the share button. Someone that you know maybe needs a little bit of encouragement. I think for us as a people and just as a society, things have been a little tough. And so I'm really excited about tonight's guest because I believe that they are going to help get us equipped with some things that we can take and kind of put in our toolbox, so to speak, as it relates to preserving our joy. Now, this conversation is specifically centered around Black culture and Black people. However, I really do believe that some of the things that you will hear in tonight's event are going to be applicable no matter what background you come from. I believe that you'll love who we have coming in. And so I just want to give a couple more minutes again for you all to share and for some others to come on. But we're going to have a really, really great time tonight. A really, really great time tonight. Again, this is a part of a series that we'll be doing every Thursday at 7 p.m. A new guest, and there's going to be some things that you really just don't want to miss. So I'm really, really excited tonight. In particular, we have two amazing people that will be joining us tonight. They are not just influential to the TLC community, but they are influential to the Richmond community. They are two pillars as it relates to mental health, to wellness. I would say to soul care, as one of them has coined. And I really believe that their influence is going to be really, really necessary to what it is that we're bringing. And I think the goal of this series really was to make sure that we were having conversations that were very relevant to what we're going through as a people and as a society. So when we talk about an enduring history, we're going to talk about some things that we pulled on from the past as African Americans in our society. Also talk about some of the things that we can implement in our present day and some ways that we can help build our future. And so we thought that it would be good to really start from the inside out, so to speak. And so that is why we're starting with preserving Black joy. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up our guests. Our guests are none other than Frank and Sheila Battle from the Battle Station, and they'll have a chance to introduce themselves a little bit more. But they do amazing work in the realm of counseling and soul care. Very prominent speakers. Sheila is a TED Talk speaker. They an author. They've done amazing work, and we're just so grateful for their presence in our community, their presence in the Richmond area and abroad. And we're so glad to have us, Frank and Sheila Battle.
Oh, hey, good evening, good evening. Let me see if
How
I can
are
see
you?
so that you can see both of us. Or either that or we gotta get a little closer.
There we go.
We gotta get a little
How are you guys doing this evening?
We are
We're
good.
doing well.
We are good. We
What
are
is
so happy to see you.
I am happy to see you all. I think we have not seen each other since you all were guests for our Gravity series back in January or February of, was it 2021? So it's been probably almost exactly a year. Since we've gotten to see each other's faces, you all really made such a deep impact on our community. And really, really, I think as everyone was kind of going through a lot of grief and trauma 1 year into the pandemic, you all really came in and were just like a healing balm to our community. And so when it was time to have this conversation, I really could not think of any better guests than the two of you. And so I'm really, really glad that you're here. Now, I told our community a little bit about you all, but I would love for you to introduce yourselves.
Well, first we want to thank you for your kindness.
Yeah.
That was a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And we have had some amazing and soulful conversations with folks since our time of sharing with Pastor Vernon, and even from the women's event with you and Pastor Ashley. So it's been an incredible journey, and we're here to help service the community in the ways of mental health and emotional wellness. So I'm Sheila.
I'm
And we live, love, and serve from the battle station. Our home is a resource and a refuge to those who are hurting, and even to those who are experiencing joy. We're here for all of it. And we want to do the work that's ours to do, that's assigned to our hands to do, which is to come alongside and to share in life and love with whoever dawns our doorstep.
I love
just,
that.
just strengthen people, you know. Just as a quick example, just over this time, we've been doing a lot of marriage ministry kind of stuff. And so even from the grief conversation to getting more so into the relational part of it. So that's just, the work continues, and we'll continue doing the work as long as we're able to.
Yes. And the babies still call us too.
Yeah.
So
it's all that is awesome. I think you all remind me of when I think of, especially when I think of Black culture in particular, I think of the village. And how, you know, we always say that it takes a village to raise a child. But I realize even as we all mature, that child still always needs a village, no matter how old that child gets. So in legitimate child age, you need that village. In adolescence, you need it. In your teenage years, you need it. As a young adult, you need it. As a full-grown adult, you need it. As a spouse, you need it. As a parent, you need it. I feel like you never stop needing the village. And so we're really grateful to have people like you in our community, because somebody's got to stand in the gap to be the village.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot.
Right now, we see that it takes a village to heal a community. So all of us have a role, and all of us have a part in this next season of healing for everybody.
And we just we love our TLC community.
Yes, we love y'all.
We love the fam.
We love you guys too so much. Well, yeah, when you talk about healing a community, healing a village, I think that leads us right into the conversation that we'd like to have. So tonight we want to talk about this idea of preserving Black joy. How do you preserve Black joy? And I just kind of want to start off with kind of like a really basic question. Black joy right now is a topic or term that is being used a lot. It's being used, I see it more and more floating around within the last year or so. And so I think that sometimes what happens is we see terms used really, really often, and they feel good or they seem like they're relatable. And so we just use them. But sometimes we've never really gotten the full definition of what they are, especially looking, I know that we have some members of our community who aren't from the African American community. And so some people might be wondering, like, why do we need even this idea of Black joy in particular? Why is it necessary for it to even be coined? So I would love to know from you all, what is Black joy? How would you define it?
Okay. Do you want to start? Okay. So I think I can say what it's not more than I can say what it is. What it's not is a trend. What it's not is based on situations. It's not based on what's happening or an event. It is the idea that this joy we have, the world didn't give to us and the world can't take it away. It is this idea that the joy of the Lord is our strength, right? And so as a people, as a culture, we are known for our joy despite whatever, right?
Yeah.
So fill in the blank on the whatever. So in slavery times, we were dancing. During segregation, we were singing. There was always this expression of this joy that we have. And I think what's trending right now is a request to normalize our joy, to normalize the things that bring us joy. So it doesn't have to be an occasion, it doesn't have to be a situation or an event. I could have an expression of Black joy just because I'm sitting this close to this gorgeous man and he smells so good. It could just be that. It could just be that I came home from work and there was some babies here to hug and to kiss on. And so we take pictures of that so that we can capture and memorialize our normal and expose that normal to the world and to say, you know, this is who we are too. We're not just the violent scenes of murders that you've seen on TV. We're not just to be feared because we have on a hoodie. We're not to just be tagged as angry because we're strong in our tone. You know, it's all of these things. We get all of these other labels and all of these other stereotypes. And yet there's this joy. There's this joy. And so I think this is trending because we're trying to say, we're not just what you perceive. We're all of these things too. And that our joy matters.
That's really, really good.
And the fact that we just in the last couple of years, we dealt with so much.
Yes.
And that, which is this joy, the thing that Sheila was talking about, you know, it's in us. It rises up and it begins. It's like a beacon, I call it a beacon in us as a people. And, you know, if somebody from another, you know, race or culture said, well, why are you saying Black joy? You know, it's like, because we have endured.
Yes.
We are dealing, you know, like we just mentioned, we're profiled, we're dealing with all these different things. But despite all of that, this thing in us, this joy that we have, that the world didn't give and can't take it away, you know, we know, that thing rises up in us, and it makes it, and it's on display.
It's on display. And it's contagious.
It's contagious.
It's contagious.
That's good. So what I kind of gathered from you all is the reason why the term Black joy and really the concept or what Black joy is, the reason why it's so important, and the reason why it needs to be specified or defined is because joy as it relates to Black people isn't something that has been continuously on display.
Right.
Or positive imagery. So what we're seeing now is a lot of Black people kind of taking ownership, taking that back, saying that joy is not just something that belongs to every other culture, but that joy that God promises also belongs to us. And we'll take ownership of making sure that that's on display and that it's something that we're experiencing. That's really good. And so it kind of leads me to our next question. And I will say for all of you who are watching, if you all have any questions as we're going through this conversation, please leave them in the chat below. We'll take a few minutes for Q&A if there are any questions afterwards. But also, if you've already heard something that has already just blessed you or sparked your attention, make sure that you share this live with someone so that they can be inspired by this conversation as well. So a question that I have really wanted to ask you guys, because you talk about just what we have had to endure as a people that makes Black joy so important, because we've come against so much as it relates to oppression from all types, right? From all different sides. I want to know, you know, because of what we've faced, we're also known as being very resilient. We're known for being very strong. In some cases, it can be looked at as aggression, right? But we fight through a lot of different things. I want to know, especially as it relates to Black joy, when does our resilience become a weapon instead of a good thing? When does our resilience become a weapon instead of a good thing? And how can we prevent that from happening?
That's such a good question. So I think it becomes a weapon every time it is easily dismissed.
Mm.
Our resilience can be easily dismissed and sometimes not labeled as strength at all. Um, and that is a problem. It is a problem in every sector of life that I can think of, in the workplace, in the church, sometimes in community. And it's not anybody else's responsibility to name us.
Mm.
It's not anyone else's responsibility to assign our level of depth or strength. That's for us to do, right? And so when we give away our agency to other people and we allow their terms and their perceptions to consume us, it makes us forget who we are. And so we are resilient. It's in our DNA. We can't help it.
Right.
We are a people of strength and grace and character and integrity, and we can't help it because it's in our DNA. And historically, when you look at what we've had to overcome, there's no denying it. And yet we live in a society where that strength can be dismissed. It can be weaponized against us and used in stereotypical ways that don't lend to the truth of what all of those terms really means for us, right? I think about that common humanity isn't always common. And so when people weaponize our resilience, when they weaponize our strength, what they do is they strip common humanity off the table. And then it's not as easy to say that we should be just as joyful about our relationship, that we should be just as joyful about a beautiful day, that we should be just as joyful about a baby's giggle or any of those things as any other culture, as any other people. No, we have a right to those joys. We have a right to all of that just as much as everyone else. And still overcome all of the challenges. We can do both. We are very diverse people and we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. And because we can, oftentimes that is weaponized against us because people look and they just wonder, well, how is it that they are so strong? How is it that they are able to bounce back? My husband and I don't have any problems talking about the tragedies that our family has had to live through. And every time we do, Pastor Lauren, someone says to us, there's no way I could stand up and talk about my sister being murdered or my nephew being murdered or 18 people dying in 24 months in our family. Like, there's no way I could even talk about that and not break down, not lose it. How do you get out the bed in the morning? It's something about the Holy Ghost. I don't understand, but I got it. And because we have it, we walk in a level of resilience. We walk in a level of strength and we walk in a level of joy that doesn't have to be explained, but we don't mind putting it on display.
That's so good. That's so good. That's really, Frank is just shaking his head.
This thing is real. This thing is so real. And that's why, I think I struggled a little bit because I didn't want this to be a trendy conversation about hashtag Black joy. Like, no, we're living this thing. And if you survived with any reasonable portion of health and strength, if you've survived the last 2 years, clothed in a little bit of your right mind, you have a reason to celebrate the joy that has kept you. You have a reason to acknowledge the strength that has undergirded you in all of this. And so, yes, post those pictures, hashtag it, share it with all of your friends because somebody else is not having such a good day.
Yeah.
Somebody's not having such a good day. And it could just be the picture of your little baby girl opening the front door for you. Or it could just be the beautiful tree that you saw because the weather's going crazy and the trees are changing already. Like whatever that thing is that brought you a moment of solace, that brought you a moment of refuge, that brought you a moment of joy, snap those pictures, make that video, post it online. And here's why. Because the joy you get back tenfold. It keeps coming back to you. And we can change the narrative of what we're seeing on social media. We can change the narrative of the energy that we're putting out. And we can put things out there that elicit a smile, that elicit a remembrance of something wonderful, beautiful, joyful. And we don't have to have our heads hung all the time about all the things that have happened, because it would be easy to do so. Right. Joy is an act of resistance. It means I see all the things and still I have joy. It means, yes, I did have to bury a loved one, and yet I know who holds tomorrow. And so it's going to be all right. It's that's carrying us through this time. And it's how we're keeping each other uplifted and encouraged.
That's so good. That's so good. There's a couple of things that you said, from joy being an act of resilience to us having the right to celebrate things, right?
Yeah.
And then the presence of like our faith, right? And how our faith is one of those things, that our faith in Christ is one of those things that is literally carried a people through generations. I want you guys to lean into some of the work, right? Because I think when you guys talk about what you've been able to overcome and what we have a right to do as a people, and what God has given us, I think that there are things that are easily accessible, but when we talk about the work, or when we think about the work, whether it's the work that we do spiritually, or the work that we do mentally or emotionally, I think oftentimes what can happen is we can find ourselves kind of going through the motions of all of the traumatic changes, especially when you think about how many things have happened within the last couple of years. What does that work look like? And I'll also say this. When thinking about Black joy not being a trend, right? A lot of times, because we see it on social media, it almost sometimes stops at like the pictures that we see, right? Or it stops at the hashtag, or it stops at this very like small moment. But what is some of the work that is required to find ourselves steeped in Black joy and making it something that we live out, like you said?
Yeah. Ooh, how much time you got? Okay.
You got a few minutes.
Okay, so here would be my clinician soul care hat. This is the first thing that I would say. Each of us has a decision to make about how we will memorialize this morning, yesterday, last month, last year, the pandemic, all of that. And we can either wrap that memory in the losses, or we can wrap that memory in the lessons. Mm-hmm. It's our choice. It's our choice. And it doesn't mean deny or hide or avoid. It doesn't mean that. It means stick your head in the sand and pretend like these things didn't happen. But what it does mean, and if the Bible is right, let it be right, that everything that happens has to ultimately work together for my good. Why? Because I love God, and because I'm called to do something for him. Now, I might not have all the details of the how or the what, but if I'm breathing and I'm on the planet right now in this dispensation of time, it means that I'm supposed to be doing something. Okay. Yeah. So whatever I had to go through, whatever I had to grow through to get to, is part of the process. And either I can enumerate in my mind about the losses and all the bad, or I can say, Holy Spirit, great teacher, show me the lesson. Don't let me walk through all of this and come out on the other side empty-handed. What is the lesson? What has all of these experiences fitted my mouth to teach, fitted my hands to do, fitted my feet to go? All of it has some sort of purpose. It has some sort of meaning. And because his plan is ultimately the plan, and all I know is the page that I'm on, I have to press into him. I have to continuously seek him. I have to be in prayer, but I also have to claim my right as a daughter and receive all the benefits that come with being a child of God. So yes, grieve, go through, say today's not a good day. It's okay to say I'm not okay. All of that, do all of that. But don't do all of that and then buy a sofa and get a lamp and stay there and get and make it an apartment. Like, let's not do that. Let's not make a memorial on something that's meant to be a memory. Let it be a memory, and then let's come on and let's get to the lesson. Let's come on and let's get to what's next. Because our next best step is one breath away. It's one decision away, right? And so no, we don't have to cloud our minds with, oh, this is so hard, and who's going to help me, and how am I going to get through all of this? Because everything we need for life and godliness has been provided, and everything means everything. So if you can come up, if you can just come up, if you can just pick your head up out of where you are enough, Holy Spirit will show you all of the resources, all of the things that are right there. Now, they might not be who you want, how you want, or say it the way you want us to hear it, but it's there. Everything we need for life and godliness has been provided. And so we have a responsibility to ourselves, to this next breath, to acknowledge that and to say, yes, all of these things happen. Yes, all of this was bad, but it's not over. If I'm breathing, it's not over. If the sun comes up tomorrow, it's not over. And so then, God, what is mine to do? What is the lesson? Carry me through. Show me the way. Tell me what's next. And then show me who's on my team. Show me who sits at the table of my life that's meant and purposed to be with me in this season of life so that I can go on to my next phase. So no, we don't have to get stuck in the memory. We don't have to memorialize things. We don't have to do that. We can step into a new space, and we can step into it with grace and self-compassion and enough loving kindness towards ourselves to say, okay, I can only make one step today, but I'm gonna make that step. I'm gonna make that step.
And one of the things that we learned through all the trials and the things we had to deal with, when you're going through it, it's hard. But when you start having things to kind of surmount and they become right after, you kind of get this thing that you build up this. Well, I don't want to use the word. You build up this thing where when we got to the place where we got to the point where it was like, we're going through this for a reason. That at the appointed time, there will be someone that we will need to encourage and put some oil in their lamp, as the old folks say. So we can't, because we just dealt with something we hadn't really talked about it. We had something in our family that was last year that was, it hit us really hard. But we were sitting in the hospital and having a conversation, and we said, there's a reason this happened. And it hasn't been revealed to us just yet. But we got a history with God.
Yeah, the track record. The track record is real.
We know that at the appointed time, the individual or persons that needs to hear from
that story
from the experience, we will share that. So I think when you put your perspective in that mindset, and not make somebody's not gonna like this. The woe is me. You start getting in the woe is me. And then you sink and you sink and you sink and you sink. But if you kind of get in the mindset, kind of reset your mind, renew your mind to the point of God, there's purpose in this, even though it hurts. There's purpose.
And that's not to discount people because we don't want to discount people who are clinically struggling with anxiety, depression. That's a different conversation.
Yes.
Right? That's a different conversation. That's not what we're saying. We're saying folks who are of sound mind and able body, who have a habitual cycle of sinking into deep, dark places, that there's a way to get out. There's a way of escape. Now, if you are a person who is suffering with mental illness or emotional dis-ease, then absolutely reach out. Again, peek your head up as high as you can. And the resources around you are there. Call us, call the church, make those calls, because what doesn't have to happen is that become your story.
Right.
That doesn't have to become your story. It can become a chapter in your story, but it doesn't have to be the whole story. And so there are people, there are services, there are resources right around you that are available and standing by now to take your call. Okay. So don't feel like if you're in a bad spot or if you're in a dark place that you have to stay there. And there are exercises and resources and things that you can do. And you could do all of those things and still struggle. You could do all of those things and still struggle. But here's the promise of God, that he won't leave and he won't forsake. And at the same time that all of that is happening and you're finding your way, you are not alone. You could never be utterly alone, whether you are a victim of multiple crisis syndrome or just one big bad thing happened and you can't get past it. You are not alone, period.
So good. That's so good. That's so good. So we've got to make sure that we're not memorializing what should be memories.
Yeah.
We've got to lean into that joy. Now, one of the things that you guys kind of made me think of is some of the boundaries then that are necessary to do what it is that you guys are talking about. I'll use myself for an example. When I think about what the people, we think about George Floyd, we think about Ahmaud Arbery, we think about Breonna, we think about all of these different situations where we've been fighting for justice. They're one of hundreds, right? 2 and 3 of hundreds, right? But I think when we think about the last 2 years in particular, the fact that we were fighting for justice for these and other cases amidst being in a global pandemic, amidst, I think, people individually experiencing more loss than they ever have in a period of time at home, amidst people being afraid of sickness and disease, amidst people having financial hardships. There have been a lot of things back to back, right? And so one of the things that I even noticed within myself is I am very much a proponent for justice. That has always kind of been a part of my story, a part of my narrative. Myself unable to study the cases the way that I used to, or unable to keep up with the trials or the way that I used to. I remember that when actually the first time you and I met, Sheila, was at the height of the pandemic, and you and I were conducting a conversation for a group of women around racial reconciliation. And so around the time, I was doing a lot of talks. Pastor Vernon was doing a lot of talks around that time. And it seemed like people kind of picked their poster children for racial reconciliation. Right. And initially I was like, this is what I love to do. It's always been something that I love to do. But as life happened, I found myself backing further and further away from the conversation, to the point that with I believe that Ahmaud Arbery, with the final verdict of his case, it was a victory, but like a bittersweet victory, because it was just like the fact that we have to rejoice about this is mind-blowing, right? And I remember feeling a little bit guilty because I couldn't even post about it. I couldn't post about it because I could not wrap my mind around it. And there were so many things that, and I often have felt this way, that there's so many things that oftentimes we as Black people are going through just as human beings. It seems like we almost have to choose, am I going to carry weight as a human? Am I going to carry weight as a Black human? Am I going to carry weight as a woman? Am I going to carry weight as a man? And it's like you almost got to choose, like, how much weight can I carry right now, right? what do I need to kind of shy away from? So like, can you guys lean into some of the boundaries and specifically thinking about just the situations that Black people face as people, and then what we're facing as humans, some of the boundaries that might be necessary for us to preserve our joy? When is it okay to set up a boundary, and when do we need to stretch ourselves a little bit?
So, this is a hard question for us personally, and here's why. We have 2 cold case homicides in our family.
Yeah.
And the details around whose hand was on the gun might be different, but we all stood over a 6-foot hole with our loved ones in the ground. So when I think about what you're saying as it relates to boundaries, we could not do what we do at the level that we do it had we dived into every case that was being profiled on TV. So we had to make a decision that there's a percentage of need to know and there's a greater percentage of don't need to know, right? Yeah. We couldn't protect our children. They're on social media, so they were seeing all kinds of things and hearing all kinds of things and coming to us with questions, and we had to have really hard conversations with them about what was happening in the world. Our daughters know that their grandparents were civil rights leaders and did all of these things, and yet we have 2 cold case homicides. And then when they're watching Black bodies be brutalized on their phone.
Yes.
So just the pinging of that, ping that around in your head and see where you land. So at some point, you have to make a personal decision. This is my limit of what I can ingest, what I can digest, what I can take in. And it is a radical act of self-care to say no more, to say no more. Because if you are so overwhelmed with the details and the stories and the images that it enrages you and you have nowhere to actively unpack that rage, then it's going to land in your body somewhere and turn into something.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a whole nother conversation about fibroids and lumps in our breasts and all of these things. All of that rage and all of that anger and all of that resentment and all of those unhealed, unresolved emotions and stories, they're in our bodies. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and every believer needs to read it. Our bodies, yes, are fearfully and wonderfully made, but they are created to carry stuff. And if we don't make a decision to lay some things at the foot of the cross, because we didn't know what was going to happen with Ahmaud Arbery's case. We didn't know what was going to happen with, name any of them. Breonna Taylor, do we have an answer? Like at some point, you have to know what you have to do to maintain your own sense of sanity in the midst of chaos. Because the times are chaotic, but we don't have to be. And what we resolved was that it didn't make us any less Black because we weren't posting about these things. It didn't make us any less Black because we weren't part of the protest. When we buried our loved ones, no one was there. There was no protest. There was no news camera. And yet our nephew and my sister are still the same dead. And so we had to make a decision that we will pray without ceasing from our seat. And that was just as radical. That was just as much of an act of resilience as everything that everybody else was doing, because that's what was ours to do in that. Yeah. And for those who were supposed to go and supposed to march and supposed to do all of those things, God bless. But everything isn't everybody's to do. And we don't get to discount each other's pause for the cause because we're not all doing the same things, yes. Right? We can't do that to each other, because if once we start doing that, the division isn't someone else's fault, it's ours.
That's good.
Right? So we got to be careful about how we tag things that we don't understand, and how we're not having good conversations with people across thought processes and opinions from us. We can have those conversations. We can have soulful conversations. We talk to Black Republicans. We talk to skinheads. I mean, we've done all of those things in these 25 years together. We've done all of those things. We've been on the front lines of critical things that have happened in Richmond. And then we knew when it was our turn to take a seat and let we could tap out. You know, even in wrestling, you got to tap out, right? So at some point we knew this isn't ours to do and we have to tap out. So I think we as a people have to not say that all of us have to do anything. Know what's yours to do and be faithful and diligent in doing it.
Yes.
But have some spaciousness for what's mine to do.
Yeah.
Have some spaciousness for that.
And then when you mentioned that word boundary. This was, you'll remember this, 2020, I think it was. I had this moment. I'm a Black man. And we were having a conversation. And I said to my wife, I am not okay.
Yeah.
I am not okay. I have to go into this office and you're not even saying it to me, but you're looking at me, asking me, are you okay? How are you? And just that look, that feel, that tension with all that was going on. I had to say it. I'm not okay. But yet I had to remember what I said a few minutes ago. That I want to let that be a place where I would just take residence, put a stake in the ground.
Yeah.
So I had to come up out of that, find some tools, talk to some people,
right,
and work my way through it.
Yes.
Because to be honest with you, if I'm not okay, me being out, I'll just say it this way: it took me a minute. All honesty, it took me a minute to go to the Robert E. Lee Monument.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It took me a minute. We finally went as a family.
Yeah.
But it took me a minute because just seeing, hearing, and knowing. I'm from the South. Mm-hmm. And then I did go, and in that moment I went, you want to talk about Black joy? Beauty?
Because it was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
From hymnals to the Cupid Shuffle.
Was all happening at the same time. It was beautiful.
But my point is that I would not have been any good in that state of mind, but I set that boundary. I was honest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times for as men, as we deal with all of this, if we're not honest with ourselves,
tell the truth.
Find a spouse, a girlfriend, a therapist, find somebody that you can be honest with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you will sink. You talking about the sunken place from Get Out? You will sink.
Yeah.
And this is why we can't do this to each other, Pastor Lauren. Because if I go do what you're doing, you don't know what my recovery game looks like. I might not recover as quickly as you. And so that's part of the reason why we didn't run down to the monument, because my recovery time would have been longer. And I still got work to do. We still got people coming and calling and families to help and couples to help. So when you are in tune enough with yourself, when you are self-aware enough to know this I can do, but this I cannot, then no, nobody gets to bully you. Nobody gets to bully you. You can set that boundary and keep it set. Absolutely.
That's so good. I have one more question, and then we'll open up to see if anyone else has questions in the chat. But Frank, you mentioned this idea of vulnerability and how it was necessary for you to have some tools in your toolbox as far as people are concerned. You know, when we talk about Black people and Black families in particular, you know, I think this generation now is doing a bit better when it comes to embracing mental health and wellness and resources. But we come from families that believe in keeping the door shut tight.
Yeah.
We come from families that believe in, you don't tell our business, you don't tell what's going on. I think we're just now, when I think about millennials in particular, I feel that the millennial generation and Gen Z are really breaking a lot of generational curses around even the stigma for going to see a counselor, going to see a therapist. So you are as certified counselors, and then human beings and Black people yourself, right? What are the roles that vulnerability, especially around therapy and counseling, what role does that play in preserving Black joy? What role has that played for you? And also, where do you see it kind of taking us? Where do you see it kind of even taking us forward? The necessity of it.
Right. I think it starts back with the decision. Right. We got everything starts with we got to make a decision that we are worthy and able to do inner work.
Yeah.
We are worthy and we are able. The resources are out there. We're not going to fall apart. We're not going, everything isn't going to come undone. It will get better, right? So we have to be able to make that decision, and we have to be able to value our own journey enough to say, this isn't okay anymore.
Yeah.
This mindset in my family, it's not okay anymore. It's not okay that we don't talk about what's the guy's name?
Bruno.
It's not okay that we don't talk about Bruno.
Don't talk about Bruno.
That's not okay. It's not okay for Bruno, and it's not okay for everybody else that loves Bruno. Why are we not talking about Bruno? So
Right.
so the decision, and then it takes courage.
Yeah.
Family, it takes courage. And that's why we've chosen to walk alongside, because we know that first step is so hard. It's so hard. People tell us all the time, the hardest part of this was calling y'all.
Yeah.
After I called y'all, then everything else kind of fell into place. But calling y'all, saying I need to have a soulful conversation with somebody about this was the hardest part. But family, I promise you, there is not one family, one client, one kid, one couple that has said, I wish I hadn't done that. If anything, they say, I don't know why this took me so long. I don't know why. I could have saved my marriage. I could have helped my child. I wish I had not waited so long. And COVID and all of the death and mayhem that came with that is making people remember that time is not ours.
Yes.
We live in time, but it doesn't belong to us. And so what I would encourage people to do is lay down your reasons. My grandma used to say, your excuses don't excuse you from what needs to be done. If you know what needs to be done is your inner work, then your excuses don't excuse you from doing it. Because either you can suffer long or you can heal in stages.
That's so good.
Either you can just keep suffering forever and ever, amen, or you can heal in stages, one day at a time, one breath at a time, one soulful conversation at a time, one revelation at a time, one yes at a time, one boundary at a time. You can do it. It's not, you don't have to allow yourself to get overwhelmed with the volume of what needs to be done. Just start.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just start.
Yeah. And
just start.
And finding your tool, man, for me, it's journaling. And I stumbled on that. You know, you get to that, you find that space where you can write out and be honest. And if you ever do this reflective thing in journaling, when you look back at what you wrote, and I'll use myself as an example. When you write something, you go, I'm crazy. It's not medical, but it's just like,
I can't believe I wrote all of that.
I need to somebody, or I need to really look at this.
Yeah.
And there was more there than I thought there was going to be.
Yeah, there was more there than I thought.
Yeah.
And so then you can take that, and then that'll point you in a direction, and be honest with yourself, and then begin to find people. Sheila mentioned who sits at the table of your life.
Yeah.
Find the people that are in that inner circle that you can find someone to talk with. As especially I applaud the millennial generation for being so being very not unashamed of therapy
very
and
courageous
and coaching and all of that. It's great
Yeah.
because we just referenced that we don't talk about Bruno. Everybody got Bruno in the family.
And sometimes you Bruno.
Sometimes you're Bruno and don't even know it. And the thing, and then the crazy thing about it is, it's like you have a situation like my situation where I don't know, nobody talked about my dad much.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's a big question mark about my health, habits, and all these other things because nobody talked about it.
Right.
And not that he was a bad man, nobody just talked about it. And so you end up in a situation where you go through, and a lot of times you end up trying to figure out stuff and trying to find your way. And then my thing was, as I began to really journal, and then at one point in time, some years ago, we always have this phrase we say, we relate daddy issues to women. I was like, I got daddy issues.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I had to deal with that. Yeah. And so that's my point about that is just finding that tool, that resource that will allow you to get to the place where you can, seek out that vulnerability so that you can free yourself, from the weight of it all. It's a saying that we've been using lately, unpack your own bag.
Unpack your own bag.
Don't let the people at the airport do it. Unpack your own bag.
Unpack your own bag. And don't let people tell you that it's not your bag to unpack. And that you right now, and you don't have permission. It's your bag. It's your bag. It's your life. You unpack it.
That's really, really good. There's a couple of things that you guys said earlier that just really kind of affirms what you just said about this work that we have the right to do. When I think about this idea, when you talk about don't song, I think it's why what you said in the beginning was so important. Joy is our birthright. It's something that we have a right to do because I think that oftentimes suffering can become our identity.
Yeah.
So we think to suffer, having the right to have joy. Which then goes back to what you all said about resilience and maybe even pivoting our resilience. Sometimes that resilience looks like us being up. Sometimes resilience is found in that courage to be vulnerable and to talk to people and kind of reframing our definition of what resilience means. Sometimes we look at vulnerability as weakness, but if it takes courage to be vulnerable, then it must mean that vulnerability means strength.
Very good. Very good.
I'm catching on.
You got it, girl. You got it.
I'm catching on. We have one question in the chat. This is from Danny Carter. And she said, you have to seek counseling to heal. This is leaning into the toolbox, Frank. Do you have to seek counseling to heal, or can you start at home? What are good at-home things to do to try to continue to heal?
So I would lean. So I would lean into the journaling.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're there's no way that we could get to this conversation and not mention this. Find a feeling wheel.
Okay.
Find a feeling wheel, go online, download the feeling wheel, print a copy, and keep it somewhere near. Put it near your bed, put it on the wall when you're brushing your teeth next to the mirror, put it somewhere. Here's why. Because the other thing that we need to normalize is naming and expressing how we really feel, right? Mm-hmm. This whole thing around Black joy, the reason it's exploding is because we named it.
Yes.
It's because we named it. So until you can wrap language around the thing, until you can say, this is that feeling, this is where I am, and you can name that thing, you can't do anything about it. So until you get familiar with being with your own feelings, the journaling, and naming those feelings, the feeling wheel, then you prepare yourself for a coach or a counselor, right? It helps prepare you for those conversations, for those sessions, because what you don't want to do is pay somebody to look at you. If you got to pay for therapy and schedule it and do all of that, then you want somebody to listen, but you got to have something to say. And sometimes, people will have a session with folks, and then 2 days later they'll call and I hold the phone and they cry for 30 minutes. But that's because the dam has been broke. There's a crack in the foundation. And so now all of those emotions are coming out. All of that's happening. And it's so good. It's so freeing. And the part of all of that they feared the most is the thing that freed them the fastest. That's what freed them the fastest. They come to us thinking that it's about trust issues or it's about communication. When no, it's about the fact that you're still mad because your father left, and you're still mad because your mother was mean, and now you're married and you're having these challenges and you're clashing, and you think it's because you don't know how to communicate with each other. No, you meet with Frank and you meet with me, and let's do the separate thing first. And then we can come back together and have a conversation about you as a couple. So yes, there are things, there are tools that you can do yourself. Okay. Now with that, I'm going to say, if you are struggling in ways that you cannot manage, then you need to call a licensed clinician to help you. Okay. If you need medication, call your doctor, and don't just go to Walgreens and get it, take it. Because sometimes what's going on is a blood thing. It's our blood is off, our numbers are off, and the medication will level us out so that we can journal, so that we can use the feeling wheel, so that we can go to counseling. So please don't dismiss your inability to recover.
That's good.
Because you can recover, right? And some of us need a little medication and the coaching and the counseling. Some of us can do some things at home, right? We can use some tools and we can get started on our own. And then we lead into a bigger, broader conversation with someone who's trained to come along. Because your girlfriends are great. Mom and them is great. They're great. They're great. And they're going to give you a piece of sweet potato pie while y'all talking. And it's great. But they might not have the tools.
Yeah.
Right? Because if talking about it just lands you back where you started, then that wasn't therapeutic. Yeah. So sometimes that conversation needs to shift to somebody who can give you some tools so that you spiral up and on instead of down and out.
That's so good. That's so good. Thank you. I think we're at our last couple of minutes. I do want to see if there are any more questions before we close out this conversation. This has been incredible. This has been absolutely amazing. I think you all always give us just such great things for ourselves, but I think this conversation really was good for our community. Our church family has experienced a lot of tragedy in the last couple of months, and I think that this is a conversation that really just have the ability to administer healing to us as a whole. So we're really honored for how God continues to use the two of you. With our last couple of minutes, I don't see any more questions, but with our last couple of minutes, is there anything that you all just want to leave our community as we close out this conversation?
I'll just say this: with all that we dealt with resilience, all of the social justice, all the things going on, death, all of this. Don't be the victim. Be the victor. Don't be the victim. If you allow yourself to be. We talked about that whole joy thing. Just let that joy within you. Let it bubble up. Mm-hmm. Holy Spirit, all of it, work its way up, and you just be the victor. Be the victor. I think sometimes we get, and we kind of encounter this a little bit, when some people kind of get stuck in a certain space and they can't get beyond that.
Yeah.
And then when they're stuck there, things are going on. Life is happening. Months is going by. Time is going by. That's why I say press to be the victor.
Press to be the victor. So the only thing I would add, because I know we only got like 15 seconds, is that your life is spacious. Step into it.
Step into it.
Your life is spacious. It's not just this chapter. It's not just the last thing that happened. Your life is spacious. It's spacious. Step into it.
It's so good. Thank you all so much. Your TLC family loves you.
We miss you.
Can't wait to come back to church.
We miss you guys too. We miss you so much, but we are so grateful just for for who you are. Again, how God continues to use you. We're so excited. This conversation will stay up on our Facebook page. And so if any of you were blessed by this conversation, you know someone else will be blessed by it, please feel free to share it. Feel free to tag them in the comments below. And don't forget that we'll be online this weekend on Sunday at 9 and 11:15, and we'll be back for another conversation next Thursday at 7 p.m. with Dr. Nia Hamlet and Pastor Danielle Wilkins. They will be talking about preserving Black stories and how we can keep history, African American history, as American history, and how we can preserve those stories in the face of CRT being removed from schools. And so we really want to make sure that you all are there. If you know a parent, if you know an aunt, if you know an uncle, if you know a grandparent, we want to make sure that they're back here next Thursday at 7 o'clock. But thank you so much, Franklin, Sheila Battle. You guys can stay right here. We love you guys so much, and we pray that you have a great night, TLC.
Bye, TLC.
Bye, TLC.